Well, good morning again, everyone, and as always, thank you all for joining me. We are back with a host of breaking news for Saturday, May the 30th, 2020. And again, we are continuing to monitor the situation as we do know another protest is now currently taking place as we speak in the streets of Philadelphia right now. If you happen to hear the police radio, we are currently listening in as of right now. Well, we do know as well that scheduled protests again are scheduled to take place here in the downtown area later this afternoon, guys. Where actually things became quite pretty hectic last night. Where we do know that protesters were clashing with our local police officers there. They were attempting to smash out windows of local stores there in the downtown area, including an Old Navy as well as a Target store there along State Street. We do know that from what sources have stated, a few of our local police officers were injured in clashing with the protesters there. However, we do know that over 100 of the protesters there have been taken into custody at this time, as well as we do know that one source has stated that someone was reported to have pulled up in a dark colored SUV in an attempt to firebomb one of the local police officers' SUVs there as well. But luckily, good Samaritans happened to see what was going on and luckily did what they could to put the fire out before any serious damage could be done, guys. But of course, unfortunately, that is not the case when it comes to Atlanta, Georgia, as we've seen hundreds upon hundreds of protesters take to the streets of downtown Atlanta, Georgia, just outside of fake news media, CNN's headquarters there, where they actually vandalized the CNN logos there and as well as actually set an Atlanta, Georgia police car on fire there. Which can clearly be seen on video, guys, where things definitely became pretty chaotic there, where we seen multiple vehicles set on fire. Some local businesses were vandalized and looted as well. But again, we do know the Minneapolis, Minnesota governor has went on to state as well that they are activating the Army National Guard to come in to take over to try to assist local law enforcement personnel as once again more looting and protesting had taken place last night in Minneapolis, Minnesota as well in regards to the death of the late George Floyd, as we also know as well that the officer Derek Chauvin has been taken into custody as of early yesterday afternoon and charged with third-degree murder and second-degree manslaughter, guys. But unfortunately, it just doesn't seem to be enough when it comes to the protesters. They continue to take to the streets, protesting, vandalizing, and looting whatever they can. But however, though, it was Minnesota's own governor this morning went on to hold a press conference where he went on to even state, as I have said in a previous video in regards to the phony outrage, that this is no longer about George Floyd, guys. This is about troublemakers. These are agitators coming in from outside states, coming in from different states, looking to do nothing more than to cause trouble, to vandalize and to steal while they play victim and use this man's name, in the name of their own actions, guys. And it's absolutely not right. As I've stated before, it's fake outrage, guys. That's exactly what it is. But moving on, of course, well, we'll be leaving links in the description box below. But before we go any further, we do know as well there in Washington, D.C., hundreds upon thousands of protesters attempted to rush the White House there, where they were met with forces, including Secret Service, where we do know that multiple officers, including Secret Service officers, were injured in the melee with protesters there. However, though, we do know that some arrests were made there as well, as we've seen footage of protesters attempting to breach the fences of the White House there, guys. Again, for one, before we go any further, that is another reason that that this is not about George Floyd, guys. This is anarchy, is what it is. This is a bunch of revolutionaries attempting to overthrow our government and our Constitution. For whatever reason, I just can't absolutely phantom, guys, but it's just absolutely not right with what's going on whatsoever, guys. But moving on here, I will be leaving links in the description box below where the headline here reads: Minnesota governor mobilizes full National Guard, says violence no longer about George Floyd. That is correct, guys. But the article here reads, as we are looking at terrible images here of vandalism. We're looking at an image of a Family Dollar completely engulfed in flames. I think that is another article, guys. But moving on here, where the article reads, Minnesota Governor Tim Walz announced Saturday he has authorized full mobilization of the state's National Guard, something that has never been done in the 164-year history of Minnesota's National Guard. That is correct, guys. What we do know, as well as Atlanta, Georgia's own governor has now activated the National Guard as well in regards to yesterday's protest and violence that took place there as well, guys. But moving on, before we go any further, it further reads here, Walz, who has been hammered by residents, critics, and the press for his response to the crisis in his state, pushed back on the idea that the protests, which have turned increasingly violent, now have anything to do with George Floyd, an unarmed black man in Minneapolis who was killed by, of course, Derek Chauvin once again. But now we do know as well, according to sources, his own wife is planning on divorcing him now that he has been arrested, guys. But that's a different story for a different time. Right now, this is about the subject at hand with the mass protests that took in place last night all throughout the country, including, I believe, Oakland, California as well as Louisville, Kentucky once again, and many other major cities throughout the country, guys. But of course, again, here in our own local city, throughout the downtown area, things became pretty hectic according to sources where we know, again, protesters were attempting to smash out the window of local businesses in the downtown area, including clashing with police officers. Even reports of protesters jumping on the hood of people's cars there as well, guys. But again, we do know that at least over 100 protesters have been arrested in last night's melee. But moving on, guys, and I cannot begin to stress this enough, guys, as you know, I have stated yesterday, this is nothing more than phony outrage when it comes to the looting and the vandalism. It's many other officials who even stated that many of these protesters are coming in from the outside, from different states to cause trouble, guys. This is not about George Floyd, as I have stated yesterday. This is phony outrage, guys. And it's unfortunate that they are using this man's name as an excuse to go out and commit violent acts, loot and vandalize and steal and do whatever they can, set fire to local businesses and people's personal vehicles and even homes there in Minneapolis, Minnesota once again, guys. But moving on here, where let me see, what else do we have, where we do know that President Trump himself is currently on his way to Florida to hopefully view this rocket launch that is expected to take place. But moving on, guys, let me see, what else do we have here. If you give me just a quick second as well. Where the headline here reads, once again, this is out of Minnesota, guys, where the headline reads, Minnesota governor mayor slammed by local press politicians for response to death and rioting. Of course, guys, this is a Democrat-run state. And it's unfortunate what's happening right now, and it's completely inexcusable, guys. But moving on, of course, I'm going to be leaving links in regards to all of this, guys. All of this. You do not want to miss any of these stories as we're continuing to do our very best, again, to monitor this. But let me see if I can pull up anything else in regards to this breaking situation again. But we do know that protests are expected again to take place here in the downtown area a little later this afternoon, as well as many other major cities everywhere, including New York City once again, where we know that things became quite pretty hectic there as well, where we know that at least a dozen police officers there were injured in melees with the protesters. We've seen one NYPD van van there set on fire, including a thin blue striped flag that was mounted on the side of the van when it was set on fire, guys. But let me see, what else do we have here, as we are continuing to do our very best to bring you updates as it continues to unfold, as the violence across the country and the protests continue on, guys. But moving on here, where the headline here reads, live updates, George Floyd protest continue. That is correct. Where the article reads, George Floyd protests are continuing across America on Friday. Of course, this was yesterday. A former police officer, Derek Chauvin, was earlier arrested and charged with third-degree murder and, of course, second-degree manslaughter, once again, according to the article here. But we're going to continue to keep an eye out on things, guys. But could things explode once again later this afternoon once mass protests continue to take to the streets? We can only wait and see, guys. I'm going to do my very best to continue to monitor this. But the article here further reads, if you give me just a quick second here, according to the U.S. Secret Service statement on Pennsylvania Avenue, demonstrations, of course, this was outside of the White House late last night on Friday, May the 29th, and into early Saturday, May the 30th. U.S. Secret Service informed the division officers made 6 arrests during demonstrations in and around Lafayette Park and along Pennsylvania Avenue near the White House. This was last night in regards to the protesters attempting to breach the fence of the White House there. And again, as I've stated, that's how another reason you know that this is not about George Floyd, guys. This is nothing more than an excuse to cause chaos and anarchy throughout the country. But moving on, where the note here reads, demonstrators repeatedly attempted to knock over security barriers on Pennsylvania Avenue. No individuals crossed the White House fence, and no Secret Service protectees were ever in any danger. But of course, from what some sources are stating, some Secret Service officers there were reportedly injured in the melee again, guys. But again, our thoughts and our prayers are with all of our local law enforcement personnel, including our first responders everywhere, and of course the National Guard, as they are doing all that they can to try to restore peace right now, guys. But moving on, as I have said yesterday, guys, that is exactly how you know that this is no longer about George Floyd. Even when, Minnesota's own governor went out to speak out about this, guys. When it comes to all the violence throughout the country, the anarchy, the looting, and, they expect you to sit there and believe that, this is an attempt to let their voices be heard. And don't get me wrong, guys, I'm all for, people exercising their First Amendment right. That is one of the many blessings of our Constitution, as I have stated, in which the left absolutely want to shred to pieces, guys. And, we have those on the far left now, the liberal leftists, that want to completely overthrow the government and our Constitution, guys. And it's just absolutely not right, especially with these refused fascism groups where they run the streets and they burn American flags and they call everyone fascists and Nazis and racists and so on. And it's something that's got to give, guys. And I don't mean to, get off topic with the entire situation, but again, as I have stated once again yesterday in my last video, it's fake outrage, guys. And it's unfortunate that they are using a victim's name to, act upon the situation by vandalizing and looting once again and causing trouble in the streets all throughout the country, guys. Not just in Minneapolis, Minnesota, but including here as well, California, New York City, many other major cities, Louisville, Kentucky, Houston, Texas. I mean, you name it, guys. It's not just here or in Minneapolis, Minnesota, guys. But moving on, let's see, what else do we have here? This is a really, really unfortunate situation. Again, as I have stated, my thoughts and prayers are with George Floyd's family. It's really unfortunate, but moving on, guys, the next headline I am going to leave here is absolutely going to blow you away, guys. That is correct here. If you give me just a quick second here, guys, where I believe I had shared it late last night via social media, via our own local media here, where apparently now former Minneapolis police officer Derek Chauvin and the late George Floyd apparently worked at the same nightclub, according to sources, guys. That is correct. If you give me just a quick second here, I'm doing my very best to pull this article, guys. Um, it is a absolutely terrible situation with everything that is unfolding. Um, and there's no grounds for any of this, guys, when it comes to the violence. Absolutely no grounds for it whatsoever. But moving on here, if you give me just a quick second here, we have the article now where it reads, the headline here reads, George Floyd and officer, should I say former officer, Chauvin once worked security together at a former club, a former club owner goes on to state here, guys, that is correct. So it now begs the question, could there have been some kind of a beef between the two, that a former officer, Derek, chose to continue to, force his left knee into the back neck of the late George Floyd as he laid there pleading for his life, already in custody, guys, as we watch this officer with his hands in his own pocket, digging his left knee again into the back neck of the late George Floyd, guys. But moving on, of course, again, I will be leaving links in the description box below where the article reads, a former South Minneapolis club owner is sharing her story, saying George Floyd and former officer Derek Chauvin both worked security at her establishment at the same time, guys. Can you just imagine that? Where Officer Chauvin was taken into custody Friday, where we know he was taken into custody early yesterday afternoon. But the article reads, after Floyd died in custody Monday evening. But the article further reads, the former club owner in South Minneapolis says the now fired police officer and the black man, of course, they got to throw in skin color once again, who died in his custody this week, both worked security for her club up to the end of last year. That is correct, guys. So again, it makes one question: was there some kind of a personal beef between these two? One can only wait and see as, we continue to watch and monitor this thing, as we can only wait as justice takes its course, guys. But many are already not too happy about the fact that the former, now fired police officer is being charged with third-degree murder and second-degree manslaughter, which we know carries a minimum sentence of no less than 25 years or less, guys. That is correct. But it's an intense situation. We're going to do our very best to continue to keep our eye on this as this continues to unfold throughout the country. As we do know, again, Minnesota's own governor has fully activated the mobilization of the National Guard there to try to restore calm and peace throughout the city there of Minneapolis and St. Paul or wherever else, guys. As well as we do know, Atlanta, Georgia's own governor has activated the National Guard as things became pretty intense over there as well. But with that being said, everyone, please do stay tuned. We're going to continue to do our very best to monitor this once again, guys. I'm going to try to get you some footage of the protest as it unfolds a little later in the downtown area. But with that being said, for those of you watching for the first time, be sure to like and be sure to subscribe, and be sure to leave a comment down in the comment section below. And give me your thoughts on this entire matter, guys. How do you feel about this unfortunate situation that is unfolding throughout the entire country, guys? But with that being said, again, I am your host, Chi-Town Zone, for Saturday, May the 30th, 2020. And with that being said, God bless, and please do stay tuned.